hosts, Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrak. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Lose, Strike King Lures, Bass Cat Boats, Ducket Fishing, Spro, AFCO, Sunline, and TH Marine. BTL coming at you. Good Tuesday, everybody. Welcome once again to BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Look who is in studio. The one and only.
Nobody recognizes me, Mike.
I just won. I did not. I did not plan that, folks. Now, if you're listening on iTunes,
was that the bet?
We got to set this up. I got free Chick-fil-A. So if you're listening on iTunes,
right. No, he's got one Chick-fil-A. I have two.
Jimmy Houston in studio.
He does not have three.
Had the sunglasses around the neck. Now, we had a bet coming in before. I said, Jimmy's coming in studio. I said, I bet he's going to have the shades on. Mark goes, no, he's not going to have the shades on. I said, here's why. I said, he was signing autographs at the last Classic. I said he was inside and he had the shades on. I said, that's Jimmy Houston, man. I said, if there's three people who could wear shades inside, Jimmy Houston, and Jimmy Houston.
Hey,
so he comes in with it around the neck. Jeffries and I say, it's a push. We tied.
That's it. Hey,
and I just won.
These sunglasses pay a lot of bills around my house. We've paid a lot of bills selling sunglasses over the years, and we'll continue to do that, I believe. But listen, years ago, I saw somewhere and running this black guy, and he's wearing sunglasses at nighttime, and he's wearing sunglasses. He opened his mouth and he smiled, and he had all these gold teeth shining. His mouth just glittered when he opened his mouth. And I said, why you got those sunglasses on at night, dude? He just took them and he kind of adjusted them a little bit there, and he said, man, so when you're naturally cool, the sun shines on you all the time. And I liked it, and I thought, that's it. I can wear sunglasses at night. I have it right there.
Wow. That's the story right there. Well, Jimmy, it is a pleasure. It's an honor to have you in the BTL studio. And before the show got started, I had no idea. You actually went to high school here in Moore?
Actually did, yeah. I went through my junior year. I actually went to grade school and everything here.
Wow.
I started, first grade on, and we moved down to Lake Tenkiller. My dad bought a resort on Lake Tenkiller between my junior and senior year in high school, which obviously changed my life to, go from living here to living on a lake. We fished all the time, but not. That obviously makes a big difference when you start living on a lake. And so I actually went my senior year in Tahlequah and graduated there. And I'd intended to go to Oklahoma University and go to law school down here because I grew up right here. So Oklahoma University is just, in my veins.
Yeah.
And but I couldn't leave that lake, so I ended up going to Northeastern rather than OU. And when I got to be a senior in college, I was really just tired of not having any money. I wasn't tired of going to school. I liked college. That was just fine. And so when it came down to go ahead and going to Oklahoma University Law School, I didn't do that. And I tell people that God saved me from being a lawyer. But because of the fishing, I just didn't want to leave the lake, and I was tired of going to school. And all my buddies say God saved all the rest of us from you being a lawyer. He didn't save you. That's probably true too.
Wow.
A lot of my buddies I run around with in high school did go ahead and go to Oklahoma University Law School and become lawyers, and one or two of them are really, really good people.
Yeah.
And the others are crooks like all the other lawyers.
Oh,
I know you can't say that. I didn't say that.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get things kicked off.
They won't turn you off even. No. They've heard that before.
Yeah, I'm sure they have. Ty Smith. Do you know who Ty Smith is? Big time attorney here in Oklahoma.
Oh, hey, I've got friends that are lawyers right here in Moore. I mean, right down the road here in Norman. People that I fished with all my life. Yeah, I've got a lot of friends that are lawyers.
All right, I have to kick things off with this. Now, Jimmy, we have a history. And I don't know if you can remember this.
Oh God, here he's told this before.
And Matt and I have talked about this before, but it was 30 years ago, long time ago. When
I can't remember 30 minutes.
Now, you were living in Cookson, and you had a separate building where you had all your stuff in, all your tackle, your boats, and everything. Obviously, you remember that. Well, at the time, I was just fresh out of the University of Oklahoma. I was working for UPS, and you had a shipment of graphs that came in and flashers, the old Humminbird flashers.
That's right.
Let's just say that somebody, I don't know where, but somebody put a size 12 right up the side of them and just absolutely destroyed about 3 of these boxes. Well, part of my responsibility was, being the person that I had for the job at UPS, was to deny all claims no matter what. So I made a visit because the damage, anytime it exceeded, I think it was $1,000, I had to come out and do an inspection. So first of all, I was intimidated to begin with that I was going to look at Jimmy Houston's packages.
Then you're going to turn down my claim.
Then I turned, exactly.
Never had a chance.
Then I had to turn down your claim. I never felt the wrath of anybody like I felt the wrath of you. Not that you screamed or yelled at me, but man, you were upset based upon the fact that I wouldn't pay your claim.
Yeah, normally I would have shot you, so you ought to feel pretty lucky, because you're still alive,
But the rest of the story was that ultimately I called my boss and I talked to my boss and we got your claim paid on that. But you were not happy. You chewed me out pretty good, Jimmy.
And over the years, one of the things we did there at Cookson, we started selling these sunglasses on our television show. We've been doing the TV show now 43 years, and we started selling these glasses. One of the first things we started selling 43 years ago, and we sold thousands and thousands and thousands of pair of glasses. We end up selling fishing tackle and starting a catalog, which we eventually sold the catalog to Johnny Morris, and I went to work for Bass Pro Shop, and that's been probably 25 or 30 years. Well, I know it's been 30 years ago probably, but we made UPS a lot of money. There you are out there turning my claims down. Now, of course I was mad.
Now, I've got some history with you too, and I'm sure you remember it just as clearly as you remember Mark's claim.
Yeah.
Mark's claim, 1998, I was in the Casting Kids National Finals, and that was back when it was sponsored by Kmart and Wrangler and all that stuff. And we're at the Bassmaster Classic, and they take the 5 of us. We get to go to the black tie dinner, and I sat at your table next to you and Chris in 1998 at the Bassmaster Classic black tie dinner.
Is that crazy?
When I was 13 years old. And that was one of the highlights. I was looking for a picture of it. I have a big picture in my room.
There's the trophy right there.
That's the trophy from the Casting Kids thing, but that goes all the way back to it.
Is that amazing?
I mean, we're pretty much all just like best friends right there now at this point.
There you go. That's exactly right. That is fantastic. That is super.
All right, Jimmy, I want to know, I really do not know this. How did the television show get started? How did you get into it?
Well, it was we started it for a fairly crass reason. We started just to try to make money on it. And most guys did not start outdoor fishing shows or outdoor hunting shows for that reason. Most of them started because they just wanted to simply hunt and fish more. But when we started fishing tournaments, and I started fishing, as soon as while I was in college, actually, and started fishing tournaments and had a lot of success. And because of that success, we got invited on various outdoor fishing shows, and like Don Wallace here out of Oklahoma City, and Joe Krieger in Tulsa, and the local shows. And then the national show that I got invited to fish on several times was John Fox, the old American Angler show. And ironically, and you talk about a small world, which is what we've been visiting about sort of here today, looking back at those deals, John Fox is actually having his 90th birthday party this coming Saturday. 90th birthday party. And I've got to do a big event for O'Reilly down in Dallas, the O'Reilly Leadership Conference, Friday and Saturday. And I'm going to fly about 2 o'clock Saturday from Dallas to Orlando and go to his birthday party that night, go to his 90th birthday party. And but I was on those shows, and I was on John Fox's show, and because of being on those shows, people just started talking to me about, so man, you ought to do an outdoor fishing show. You ought to do an outdoor fishing show. You really, man, you did great on there. You ought to do an outdoor fishing show. And I've got two really close buddies, Roland Martin and Bill Dance, that was doing just that. And both of them talked to me about it, and I thought, well, man, I never even thought about that. So I got to studying it, and I studied it for about a year, and I looked at it. I really had no desire to do an outdoor fishing show, but I got to looking at it just simply from a finance, standpoint. I've got a degree in political science, so I get involved in politics. If I'd gone to law school, I'd probably end up being governor or something like that. One of my running buddies in college was our attorney general here for forever, Drew Edmondson, and just ran for governor. And he was, I could tell you some stories about Drew from our college days that would have sure enough kept him from getting elected to anything. But then again, if I'd run for something, he could tell the same stories about me. So anyway, I won't go into that at all. I would never tell anybody those stories, but thankfully. But from that, and I got a hold of a lot of Bill Dance's shows and Roland Martin shows and studied them and laid out a game plan and just simply from a standpoint of starting an outdoor fishing show and making money at it. And that's kind of a crass way to do things in the outdoors. But we were already fishing and hunting a lot, so I didn't really want to. I mean, it wasn't so I could go fishing more, and that's how I got started. And we did that. I set a goal the first year that because Roland and Bill both lost money for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years while they were getting their show started, and everybody told me you're going to lose money. So I set a goal that first year to lose $50,000 or less. 43 years ago, that's an awful lot of money.
What year was that?
A lot of money right
40
now.
years ago?
43. This is our 43rd year, and I thought if I lost $50,000 or less, I would do it the second year and see, go from there. So that's exactly what I set apart to do. And we actually made $32,000 that first year. And we've made money in the television show business every year except 2008, 9, and 10, when everybody in the world just about lost money in business during those times.
Yeah. Wow. All right. What about
kind of crazy.
What about tournament fishing? What was your very first tournament? From an amateur standpoint, probably the Thursday night jackpot at 10 Killer.
Well, really, of course, those weren't around back then. I mean, that was really before that. We had a tournament here in Oklahoma called the State Championship, and you could become actually Oklahoma State Champion. They don't do that anymore. We don't have an Oklahoma State Champion fisherman anymore. We have all these tournaments around, but no Oklahoma State Champion fisherman. And I started fishing those tournaments. I fished a tournament at Fort Gibson. I mean, not Fort Gibson, but Eufaula was my very first tournament, and I was in high school, and I've let's see, high school, or maybe I might have been in college, I don't know, but anyway, I finished 4th place in that tournament. And the guy that I fished with won the tournament, and he won the tournament because of me. We were in my boat and my fish, and the guy really couldn't fish, but I mean, he was really a lousy fisherman. He really was, but he won the tournament, and I was so upset, and I went back and told my dad. And I couldn't fish on Lake 10 Killer where we lived because they had a rule in those tournaments that you couldn't fish on a lake that you guided on. And I guided on 10 Killer when I was in high school and college and after I got out of college. And so I couldn't fish there. So I went to Eufaula and fished at state preliminary. And you had to get first or second in the state preliminary in order to qualify for the finals. And they had them in all the lakes around Oklahoma. We have, so many lakes. And I finished 4th. And so I was so upset. And I told my dad, and he said, well, you're just, that's pretty good. He thought I was doing good. And I said, well, it's terrible. I was so upset. And so I went and fished Lake Fort Gibson at another preliminary, and I won that tournament. So that qualified me to fish the finals. I fished Lake Keystone for the finals, and I won that tournament. And I was like a 21-year-old college kid, and I just smoked everybody. Caught ton, beat them really bad. It really made a lot of the real bass fishermen upset. And those tournaments, you were allowed to catch 10 bass and weigh them in, 10 white bass, 10 crappie, 10 bluegill, 10 catfish. And of course, you had to use artificial lure, so you could catch all those, except if you caught a catfish, it's just pure luck, And so I'd gone up there, and I slept on a park bench on Lake Keystone for a week. I didn't have any money. I slept on a park bench, and I fished all day. And I found the hardest fish to catch, believe it or not, was white bass. And we have thousands of white bass in every lake in Oklahoma, but it was the hardest one to catch. And but I found a bunch of big white bass. Crappie was relatively easy to catch. That was a relatively good new lake. Bass was easy to catch. Somehow I just, throughout the course of the day, forgot about the bluegill. I intended to catch 10 of those too, but just forgot about it, And so when I came into weigh-in, it was so cool because some of the Tulsa Bass Club guys were there, and a guy had the tournament won, and he come down there, and I had a little, 14-foot aluminum boat with a 20 horsepower Mercury on it, and I did have my trolling motor on the front, which is kind of a new deal back in those days, but didn't have a bass boat, and a guy that I remember his name, Wes Littlefield's his name, and I haven't seen Wes in years. He was older than me, so he's probably not alive anymore. But anyway, Wes he come down there, and he was leading the tournament, and he said, "Well, you doing any good, kid?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I think I did pretty good." And so we had fish stringers back then. We almost hate to tell those stories nowadays because we actually killed the fish in all those early tournaments, including the first BASS tournament. I killed that first BASS tournament I ever killed. I killed an 810, an 814, and 9.3. I had 11 bass weighed 52 pounds and 13 ounces. And we killed them all. We killed them all. It was terrible. It's just terrible to even think about that. But from that has come where we are today in fish conservation and turning fish back and everything. But anyway, so I pulled my stringer of bass up. And by 10 bass out of an ice chest, I pulled it up, and I had 10 pretty nice bass. And somebody said, "Whoa, this is going to be pretty close." And Wes says, "Oh, I don't think you got it, kid." And he's a big-time bass fisherman. He had patches and all this stuff, I'm a college kid, And he said, that's pretty good, kid. But he said, not bad. And I said, well, what about these? And I pulled up 10 big crappie on a stringer. And he said, whoa. And everybody's starting to think, well, hey. And then I got another ice box, and I had 10 big old white bass that were all like 2.5 pounds.
It's all in one day.
Yeah, just giant white bass, and it wasn't even close. I wiped them out. It wasn't even close, And because I was fishing mostly against bass fishermen, but I grew up on a lake, so as a kid, if you fish, you don't fish for bass unless you do. A lot of them do nowadays because their dad's a bass fisherman and they grow up in a bass boat. Being in a bass boat when they're 5 years. My kids and grandkids, they don't know anything but $100,000 bass boats. They don't realize everybody doesn't have a $100,000 bass boat, but we were. Everybody was a bass fisherman, and I could catch white bass and crappie, and I paid my way through college selling catfish. If it'd let me trot line a little bit, I'd have waded in 10 big catfish too. But and the great part about that story, in all honesty, and that qualified me to fish in a national tournament. So I fished a national tournament that year in 1966. So I fished 54 years nationally. This is the first year right here since I was a senior in college that I have not fished national tournaments. But I just decided, the end of December not to fish them for this year. I could have fished either BASS, Elite, or FLW to top level. But they changed the rules around a little bit, and they took some of the fun out of it for me. And I said, you guys got to quit sometime. So, but I may go back and fish a year like when I'm 80, and maybe a year when I'm 85, maybe a year when I'm 90. But the cool thing about that tournament was I was up there and I was calling my dad every night from home, and getting advice from him on the lake and telling him what was happening because he's a great fisherman. I told him, I said, I can't find any white bass. I've been all over this lake trying to find white bass, and I can't find them. And I know they got big old white bass in Keystone Lake, but I gotta catch 10 of them. And he said, well, can you catch 10 bass? It's a piece of cake. I said, I can catch 10 bass, 10 crappie easy. 10 bluegill, you catch 10 bluegill while you're fishing for everything else. Don't even have to worry about it. I think I ended up catching 2 bluegill, but it didn't matter. But he said, have you trolled for any white bass? And I said, well, no, Dad, you can't troll in a tournament. I was just like, what are you telling me to do? And he said, you don't need to troll in a tournament, you need to troll to find them. You need to know where they are. And so I started trolling, and I actually trolled the next day. I went out there and I trolled for 3 or 4 hours, and I finally caught one. I turned around and trolled back to the same spot because we trolled a lot as a kid. We did that a bunch. And I trolled back again and caught another or two, and I pinpointed where they were, triangulated it out in the middle of the lake, and went back in there and started and cast during the tournament and caught those white bass. It was all but impossible to catch white bass right then, other than trolling on Keystone. Nobody was catching any, and I think it was the only white bass weighed in the whole tournament was those 10 I had, and they were like 4 pounds or 23
Wow,
pounds.
those are big
of white bass.
So the largemouth come on a spinnerbait?
You know, and of course, you had to clean them all back those days. So.
The largemouth, did the bass come on a spinnerbait?
Yeah, I believe they did.
Shocker.
Yeah.
I want to know that story. How did you, first time you picked up a spinnerbait, do you remember that?
Well, I'm going to tell you that I've fished a spinnerbait ever since I was a kid, but now in those days we fished them slow and deep. And we did not run spinnerbaits fast up on top of the water like we do right now. And that situation came out of those Oklahoma State tournaments also. A friend of mine in Tulsa lived on Lake Keystone, lived at Manford, Joe Wells. And Joe Wells won the state championship on Lake Hudson. And you know, in mentioning friends and state championships, Bobby Bell, who from Bell Law Firm right down the road, just a couple miles right down the road, Bell Law Firm, one of the biggest law firms in the state of Oklahoma. Bobby Bell is a big-time running buddy of mine, has been ever since those early days of college. And he won the Oklahoma State championship and at Broken Bow one time, and I got second. We became friends from competing against each other in those tournaments. He was from Norman, I was from Moore, and then of course I'd moved down there to 10 Killer. But we became friends. I've been friends all these years ever since, you know, because of that. But we were fishing a tournament at Lake Hudson, and Joe Wells won that tournament on a spinnerbait, and we were back up in Rock Creek, way back up in the end, and I had some big fish found up there too, and I was catching fish on. Do you remember an old bait called a Lazy Ike Wiggly Jig Crawler? It was a worm, a plastic worm that had what we would call a chatterbait lip on it nowadays.
Yeah.
Had a chatterbait lip on it, and it had the worm behind it, and it had a couple of hooks. It was all pre-rigged. And it was a dynamite lure. I mean, it's really, really a great lure. And I was catching big bass back there on that, but if you caught several bass on those, they would break the lip off of that.
Because it was fixed. It was like
It was
a 45-degree angle
It's
on
like
it.
a chatterbait. It was the same blade we had on the front of a chatterbait. And the guy in South Carolina put a jig on that chatterbait, and that invented the chatterbait, really, from that wiggly jig crawler is exactly what happened. And but anyway, Joe Wells won that tournament, and he won it in the same area I was fishing, and he smoked them. I mean, he had a big old string of 4 and 5 pound fish, and I saw him all day long, and I had a couple of those baits break that day, but I still wouldn't have beat him. I think I finished second or third in the tournament, and so we was hanging around down there, and I don't drink, but Joe liked to drink beer, and he was drinking a beer, and I got to talking to him about how he won that tournament. How did you do that, man? You smoked me, and I was up there fishing the same area you were, and a couple other boats up there, you know, and man, you just and I know you were throwing a spinnerbait. I saw you throwing a spinnerbait, but I threw a spinnerbait, and I couldn't hardly get any bites on it. And the funny thing though is he wouldn't tell me what he was doing. And Joe Wells, he threw a big old Zebco 808. Do you remember those? A big black reel?
Oh, yeah.
They were like a Zebco 33, but twice the size.
Yeah.
And he threw it on a big stiff rod, and he threw it spinnerbait out there. And I told him, I said, I noticed you were fishing that spinnerbait fast. And he said, oh, well, you probably just saw me wind it in fast because I messed up or something. And I thought, I don't know about that. And but anyway, so I give my buddy, I give him a few dollars, and I said, go up there and buy another 6-pack of beer. And so he went up there and bought a 6-pack of beer, and I went back there. And actually, long story short, too late, but long story short, we got Joe drunk. And I wasn't even drinking, you know. My buddy was drinking, I think, but I wasn't even drinking. We got Joe drunk, and so he started to loosen up, and he told me, he said, Jimmy, he said, let me show you how to fish that spinnerbait and smoke them. And we walked down there at the dock, and he took that spinnerbait and started waking that thing on top of the water. I'd never seen this spinnerbait fish that way. We'd always crawled them around on the bottom. I mean, that's the way we'd fished them ever since we was a kid.
Wow.
And he started running it on top of the water, and I said, well, they come up and hit that on top of the water? He said, Jimmy, you saw the fish, man. I said, God. And so I went back home to 10 Killer. That tournament's probably on a Saturday. I went back home to 10 Killer and run out there the next afternoon after church, started throwing that spinnerbait right on top of the water, and them bass jumping out everywhere and grabbing it. And I thought, Lord, I have died and gone to heaven. And that actually totally changed my career. that right there changed it. And
Wow.
I developed some unique ways to throw so I could work that spinnerbait hopefully better than anybody else, and develop casting. You know, you're the casting championship. You know, I've got a big giant trophy for it, and I won $20,000 with it, which is cool. About the same they gave y'all when you won that one.
Yeah, I got a college scholarship, which doesn't mean much to a 12-year-old.
But that's was at a Big Bass Pro event over there that they had in Springfield. I won that big deal there, and actually got beat last weekend at a show in Denver at a casting championship.
Yeah, we're well aware of that.
Actually,
Yeah.
Cliff Crochet came on. He said,
Yeah, but Crochet did not beat me. His partners beat my partner. I had a girl fly fisherman, and after the fly fisherman started throwing, I went back there and told some of the bass guys, I said, that's exactly why we don't use fly rods right there. They're trying to hit their targets out there with their little flies, and they just was not able. But yeah, Crochet did, yeah, but listen, his fly guy smoked them, and I had a girl that scores a light running 200 points. And so each target you throw at, you can get 100, 200, 300, and you should get 900 on that target. That was your opportunity. And my girl gets 2 100 scores, and she's a fly rod instructor. But she was really, really nervous. I mean, I think she got nervous. A big crowd.
That's not how Cliff told
Yeah,
me.
he was
Cliff
talking all
said
kind
that he
of
just
trash.
smoked
We
you.
were the
He
first
said,
team
here's
to
how it
throw,
is,
too,
Jimmy.
so I think that made her more nervous. When I picked my deal out, I drew number one,
Mm-hmm.
and she, yeah, but they did. He did. They did. But I think I don't think I know. I scored the highest score of the bass fisherman, and but Crochet's fly guy scored more points than he did. He scored more points than he did, and he probably didn't tell you that.
No, he left that part out. He said he was up there with that orange jersey and that orange hat. He said, "Here, Jimmy, here's how it's done."
Yeah.
No, he didn't say that.
Yeah,
he was
he did.
super excited.
Well,
he said, "I got up there."
He
Jimmy
did have
Houston.
he did have that orange on, and I gotta tell you, orange makes me want to throw up. That kind of that made my stomach a little sick, so it's probably affected my score a lot. But I didn't throw a perfect score, but I threw pretty close to a perfect score. I mean, but my girl and she was really good to the fly rod. But his guy, and they've been holding that tournament at Denver show every year. So some of those fly guys that are out there every year, they knew the course and they knew what to do. Well, we practiced a lot. Cliff and I got up there and practiced for an hour one day, just playing around with each other. We did have, I'm sure Cliff told you the day before that competition that we did have a 3-man contest. We had a 3-man contest between him and me and another guy out there that's a professional guide out there. He just, no fly rods, just bass fishing stuff. And we had and it was Cliff's idea. It was actually, the contest was a game of horse with casting rods.
Okay.
And who was the first individual eliminated in that? Let me think. He was from Alabama, and he's got a French name. And Cliff was the first guy. Yeah. And we got down to me and the other guy, and I beat him. So we had the actual
Competition.
throw your chest out competition. With the day before, Cliff.
He was very complimentary of you. That's him.
He was.
Dressed as a Philly fanatic there.
Which one is Cliff? The one on the left or the right?
All right, I want to let everybody know that's watching. We will get to the instant feedback, Jimmy. A ton of questions for you. So here in about 10 minutes, we will go to the instant feedback and answer some of the questions that are out there. I want to do this now, Jimmy. On the studio desk right here is Bob Cobb's book. Have you read Bob Cobb's book?
I have not read Bob Cobb's book. Bob's been a good friend ever since I was in high school, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And he is probably, well, I'm sure he's the first guy that ever wrote anything about me. Bob was the Bob was the outdoors editor for the Tulsa World, Tulsa Tribune in Tulsa. And he called me when I was either in high school or college. I was only in high school down there 1 year, my senior year, and then I was in college, of course, for 4 years there. But so I don't know if his early college or in high school. But Bob called me, and I was just like my gosh, the sports editor, because I read every word that he wrote. It's like we had back in those days, we had the Outdoor Life magazine and Field and Stream, Home Circle, and, you'd read every word that they wrote in those New York magazines, and you took it as a gospel until I got to knowing some of them guys and realized it's Yankees. I didn't know come here from Sikkim about fishing.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, and I've been trying to learn how to fish, read these articles. But now Bob Cobb in Tulsa wrote articles that could teach you how to fish because, he's an Oklahoma guy and he was talking to Oklahoma fishermen. But he called me one time down there at my dad's store and he said, tell you who he was. And I couldn't hardly believe him at first. And I said, man, I read every word you write in that newspaper. And he said, well, I've been told that you can catch 100 white bass a night on Lake Tenkiller. Is that true? I said, no, sir, that's not true. I can catch 200 a night. And he says, really? And I says, I can. And he says, well, I want to come down and do a story about night fishing for white bass on Lake Tenkiller. And he did. So he was probably the first individual, and then kind of ironic as things would happen, Tulsa's got a big connection to BASS because of Don Butler and Bob Cobb. And Ray Scott and Don Butler were very, very close friends. And the first BASS tournament that I ever fished, Eufaula, Alabama in 1968, I actually rode to the tournament with Don Butler and Jerry Roten. Jerry lives right here in Norman. Yeah. I went and visited Jerry after homecoming this year. I went by his house and had lunch with him after the homecoming game this year. But against, I think it's West Virginia, I think we played. I think we beat West Virginia again. Every year we beat West Virginia. Isn't that great? Right. Every year we beat West Virginia. But yeah, Bob Cobb is, and then he goes and ends up being the editor of Bassmaster magazine forever, and it's just amazing. Without some key situations here in Oklahoma, there might not have ever been a BASS. And Bob Cobb was one of those keys. Don Butler was one of those keys in there. Yep. My dad actually, when Don Butler brought Ray Scott to our store on Lake Tenkiller, and Ray begged me to come and fish that tournament at Beaver Lake, the first tournament they had, and I just could not scrape up $125. And when I fished the first tournament at Eufaula, Alabama, which is either the second or third tournament Bass ever had, I didn't pay that entry fee. Don Butler swears he did not pay it. Ray Scott swears he did not waive the entry fee. He said, I've never waived an entry fee for anybody. And Don's gone now, and Ray is having some health issues. Yeah. So nobody will ever know who paid that entry fee, but Jimmy did not pay his entry. Jimmy did not have $125. and the only reason I got to go fish that tournament was I was at Don and Jerry's house the night before there, or Don Butler's house in Tulsa. That's when Jerry lived in Tulsa also, and they were building baits, making spinner baits and stuff to go to that tournament. And they said, why don't you come ride to the tournament with me? And I said, man, I don't have any money to go to a tournament. And I said, I don't have the $125 entry fee. And Don told me, he said, don't worry about the entry fee. We'll figure something out on that. And he said, and they were leaving the next day. Wow. And they said, we'll pick you up on Interstate 40. And they picked me up at Interstate 40 down around Vian. He said, can you afford a hotel room? I said, how much are they? He said, well, $6 a night. I said, yeah, $40. I might be able to do that. And ironically, I went out and practiced with Ray Scott in that tournament, and he showed me some spots out in the middle of the lake. And then I practiced with a couple other guys the next day and found two or three spots of my own and got the lead in that tournament the first day. I caught 11 that weighed 52 pounds and 13 ounces. Wow. And I had a 15 fish limit. I had 3 more break my line. Should have had another 25 pounds. Wow. But Bob, very, very, just writing that very first article, probably had some significance. And then later on, when I got in bass and he got in bass, we were friends because of him coming down and night fishing that night on Lake Tenkiller. He probably don't even remember that.
Did you catch 200?
We did catch 200. We sure did. We caught a lot of crappie too. You could catch fish. You could catch them down there right now doing the same thing. We was fishing Coleman lanterns back in those days. Now they use lights that plug in, hang LEDs over the side, floating lights and stuff like that, shine the water down in a deal. We use Coleman lanterns. Same thing we shot carp with on Tenkiller is we hung a couple of Coleman lanterns over the side of the boat. Would go down the bank and shining the carp with Coleman lanterns and shooting them. And I'd get my girlfriend, who's now my wife, I would get her and my sister to row the boat. When I was 16 years old, I had 2 girls out there rolling because we didn't have a trolling motor, and you can talk a 16-year-old girl into doing about anything, but it takes a real trick to talk your sister into rowing a boat so you can shoot carp. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. All right, what I want to do, I have a page open on Bob's book, and there's a picture of 20 anglers. I want you to pick one of those anglers and tell a story about one of those anglers.
You think I could recognize them?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, if this is an old picture.
Yeah.
Just look at Bob Cobb's book here. They're all just black and white images of guys.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I could name pictures off of tons of them. As I look down through there, I spoke at Bill Norman's funeral. I helped carry him to the grave. Jerry McInnes, obviously great friends. A lot of story about him. Ricky Clunn and I visited this week. I don't know who that guy is with all that blonde hair right there. Jim Rogers, I'll tell you what, Homer Circle, I got hundreds of, all these guys, it's amazing. I could tell stories about every single one of them, and that would probably make a pretty good book in itself. But I'm gonna go up there and do one because of a historic name there, Tom Mann. Looking over there with Tom Mann. Tom
right.
Mann. A lot of those guys are gone. Billy Westmore, when he won a tournament, I got a great story about him too. The tournament was actually over at Greer's Ferry at BAS in Arkansas. But Tom Mann, of course, started Humminbird, and Tom Mann, when he started that, he's just an old Alabama boy. Did not know how to spell Humminbird. That's why it's spelled incorrectly without a G. The people think now that that's just a cool marketing tool, but he thought that's the way you spelled Humminbird, without a G in it, and so that's the way it was. And but one of the cool stories about that is when he actually sold that company, and he was such a marketing genius that it was amazing. He started building those locators, actually, the old Heath kit that you could order from. Was it Herders? Is that the old deal that we used to?
Don't look at me.
Y'all are too young to know, but there's a mail order company out in California where you could order spinnerbait blades and wires and skirts, and you could build jigs and stuff, and you could order a lot of things, and you could order a kit called a Heath kit and build your own fish locator. And he did that, and I go clear back to Carl Lawrence when he developed the little green box. I mean, before Humminbird, obviously in Tulsa, and I got one of those from Carl, and I told my daddy I would catch every fish in the lake now that I could know how deep it was everywhere my boat was. Of course, I didn't do that, but now, and I just started using Garmin this year, and their live scope is just, we should catch every fish in the lake right now, and we still can't. So, and we never will be able to catch them. But I was on an airplane with Tom right after he sold that company, and one of the marketing genius deals that where he was so smart in doing everything, and I learned a lot from him in going around doing appearances with him, because his marketing mind, he was just a poor country Alabama boy that obviously wasn't a rocket scientist if you did not know how to spell Humminbird. That just tell you something right there. But he had a marketing genius mind, and he had just sold Humminbird. And I told him, I said, man, Tom, I can't believe you sold that. And of course, like I said, he started that from building these locators out of a kit he ordered out of a mail order catalog, and building them and calling them a Humminbird and putting that little bird on there and selling them. And he got up to this point to where he had sold that company. And when he sold the company, they did not. He wanted to keep his name on there because it had said Tom Mann on every locator. Yeah. He wanted to keep that name on there because it was helping him in his fishing tournaments and stuff. But he got a lot of money for selling it. I don't remember what he told me at that time, but it was a lot for then. It was really an awful lot of money. But he said, I said they didn't want to keep it on there. And I said, well, it's still on there, Tom. How'd you manage that? What'd you do? And he said, as soon as I made the deal with them, he said, I went and called every one of the reps that we had selling them all around the nation. That was before the days of Walmarts and Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's and all the big mega outdoor stores, and you were selling basically tackle stores. And you had reps that went around and sold this merchandise to all these stores. TG&Y here in Oklahoma City had the best sporting goods departments of any place in the world. I mean, they were just incredible sporting goods departments. And actually, I got friends that sold sporting goods to TG&Y in Oklahoma City, and but But he said, I called all my reps up and I told them that I'd sold the company, and I convinced them over the phone that you guys cannot sell the locators without Tom Mann's name on there. And so when they call you and when you have a meeting and they bring you together and the new ownership and everything, you tell those owners, guys, we can't sell these if you take Tom Mann's name off of it. And they did. And so they came back to Tom and asked him, well, we decided we want to put your name on there. What will it cost us? And he got $1 a unit. And he got that off of all the Humminbird units that was sold until they developed the liquid crystal readout, and they took his name off on that, and they had a big lawsuit about it, and actually Tom ended up losing the lawsuit, which was really a good deal, not for Tom, but it was a good deal for the industry, because Humminbird, they would have lost the company, and they've actually obviously turned into being a great company, and now owned by Johnson Fishing and Minn Kota. But but that's a little story about Tom Mann.
That's interesting.
Every
That's
picture I
stuff.
look at, every picture I look out there, Jim Rogers there and Tommy Martin, I saw both of those. A tournament that Tommy Martin won, I caught the most pounds of fish in that BASS tournament at Beaver. But and I actually ended up fishing with Jim Rogers the third day of that tournament. But on that tournament I fished with Jim I guess on the third day, yeah. But the first day of that tournament, I fished with Glenn Wells, and I caught a 10-fish limited bass that weighed 27 pounds. And as we was coming back in, I was in Glenn's Hydrosport, and his engine quit. We've been having trouble with it all day. The boat swamped and turned over, and we were in the water. And Glenn had to be carried to the hospital with hypothermia.
Oh, wow.
I was just a kid, so I somehow didn't have to do that. And Glenn, it nearly killed him. But long story short, we didn't get to weigh our fish in. They pulled the boat in later, and I kept trying to get people to just hook on the boat and pull it in, because I knew we had all these big. He had about 15 or 18 pounds. He had a pretty good string too. And they weighed my fish later, and it weighed 27 pounds. The next day I caught 17 something, and so that gave me 44 or 45 pounds. Tommy Martin won that 3-day tournament with 42. And my third day catch would have, won it by. I would have won it by a bunch. So looking at those pictures, those things just pop into that when I looked at those two. Yeah. And I actually fished with Jim Rogers the last day of that tournament, and that was my worst day of the three. And Jim was a really good friend of mine, and I met him clear back when I was in high school fishing the World Series of Sports Fishing that Virgil Ward won. And they fished on Lake Tenkiller, and I fished with Virgil Ward, Glenn Andrews, Glenn Causey, Jim Rogers.
Wow.
Fished with all those guys because they were the best bass fishermen in the world at that time. And they were going out fishing with me because I lived there on the lake and could show them places to fish. To me, to get to go fishing with them, you mentioned Kevin Van Dam and Ott Defoe. You go, to me, it'd be like a high school kid going fishing with Kevin Van Dam right now, or going fishing with Ott Defoe, or going fishing with Ricky Clunn. I saw Ricky's picture there.
Yeah.
On and on and on. Well, at 16 years old, I was fishing with those guys every day for like 2-3 weeks. It's just,
wow.
And I learned a lot. I learned a lot of it. And one of the things they did, the most impressive thing they did was they could all throw so well. And that's where I added into my repertoire being able to develop casting, to its ultimate, where you could really, really, really throw perfectly well.
All right, Jimmy, I want to go to the instant feedback. Just a ton of questions here. We'll try and get to as many as we can. Let's start off with David in Wisconsin. He says, back in the 60s and 70s, were there any anglers that intimidated you?
Roland Martin.
Really?
Roland Martin intimidated everybody back in those days. Roland's won 9 Bass Angler of the Year titles. Kris is the only one close. My wife's won 7 Bass and Gal Angler of the Year titles, and then the next person down is Kevin. All the rest of us have only won like 1, 2, or 3. I mean, nobody is even in the league with Roland Martin, and in bass fishing. Ricky Clunn. And Ricky is obviously a great friend of mine, as is Kevin. If I was to rank all the fishermen of all time, I would put Roland still, without a doubt, number one. it would be pretty close between Ricky Clunn and Kevin. I'd put Ricky second and Kevin third. And none of those guys, obviously, are at the top level now. I mean, Ricky still plays at the top level in bass, and Kevin still plays, but their ability in the tournaments is not near what it was,
right?
But simply because of age. Ricky Clunn and I argued about that 50 years ago, and he said it wouldn't make any difference. But obviously, him and I have both proved that it does make a difference. Although Ricky won a big tournament last year,
He did.
But you can still win a tournament. You still got the ability to win a tournament. But Ricky run out there and won that tournament, and promptly went out the next 2 or 3 tournaments and finished in the bottom 5.
Yeah.
So. Age does have a major factor in bass fishing, just like it does in bowling and in basketball and
golf,
football,
everything.
And golf.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And I argued Ricky said it didn't matter. He said fishing because you had so much up here, and Ricky is a very cerebral fisherman. He said the other stuff is not going to matter. Well, it does. I mean, everything that you have to fishing is a very physical sport, and just like all the other sports require physicality, and you cannot. When you start losing some of that physicality simply because of age, even though you might be in really good shape and everything, it's you're just not. I mean, you're playing out there guys that are at the peak of their game around 35 or 40 years old. That's where you're at the very top of your game in bass fishing. And you watch the guys. If you look at the tournament careers, which I have done, obviously, you see that going down. And yeah, just throw one little thing out. No one has ever won an Angler of the Year title past age 50. Now, you win tournaments past age 50, but nobody's ever won an Angler of the Year title. And
that's a good point. Good point. All right.
I'm not saying they might, but it's going to be real hard for them.
Real quick, back in the day when you did the draw and draw, did you ever draw out Roland? I mean, was it ever Roland and Jimmy?
Oh, yeah. Roland and I drew out together a lot. We drew out together a lot. Larry Nixon and I drew out together a lot.
Like
Ricky
you guys
Clunn and
fight? You go at it? I mean, you're at the top of the games?
Absolutely not. I mean, of course, in those days, both fishermen stood at the front of the boat, and you simply battling every cast. It was a battle all day long. But we worked together. I didn't really care if I beat Roland. Roland didn't care if he beat me. We simply cared that we carried 15 or 10 or 7 or 5, whatever the limits were. As over the years it went down, from 15 down to where it is now, 5. Bass and Gal actually started the 5-fish limit thing, and Bass followed that, which is good. I think 5-fish limit is great. But we were just interested in putting what we knew together and fishing that day successfully. I mean, we knew if we both walked up there with a 20-pound stringer of fish, we were going to be doing pretty good. I mean, it was just that simple. And I did the same thing. And I've drawn Larry Nixon a lot. Larry Nixon, I would put in the top 4 or 5 fishermen ever. And Larry's still fishing tournaments. He's not fishing the tournament this week on Rayburn because he just had some more surgery on his arm, and he's only going to miss like 2 or 3 tournaments. He's going to fish all this year with FLW.
Yeah. All right. Frank in Michigan wants to know who wrote the song for your show.
Eddie Reisner. Eddie Reisner's in Nashville, a very successful musician, piano player, and it is probably the most famous fishing song ever. Even better than Brad Paisley's "I'm Gonna Miss Her." And I met Brad before Brad was famous as he is right now. A funny story about Brad Paisley. We were doing a deal in Nashville, and we did a deal. We got to go to the Grand Ole Opry that night, but we were doing a deal there with Johnny and something about Bass Pro Shop or something, I don't know. But way back, man. Our big thrill was we was going to get to go to Grand Ole Opry and be right up there at the front stage and stuff and get to meet everybody. And we had a big party right before that, and there was a lot of the entertainers that came over to the party. And one of them came up to my wife, this real nice young man, and he said, "Mrs. Houston," he said, my name's Brad Paisley, and he said, I'm a singer. And he said, "Is there any way that you could maybe introduce me to Mr. Houston?" He said, "I'm just such a big fan." And she said, "Well, Brad," and she said, "He's such a nice young man, And she said, "Brad," he said, "just right there he is right over there. Just walk over there and tell him who you are." He said, he'll visit with you. Said, "He's a nice guy." He said, "I'm just so nervous I can't go talk to him." She said, "Well, come on." So she brings Brad Paisley over there. And actually, I think Brad wrote that story in one of the books that Brad has written.
Wow.
But that's kind of cool, isn't it? But,
that is cool.
And now Brad Paisley Paisley is a mega star. I mean, 10 million people, 10 million times more people know who Brad Paisley are than know Jimmy Houston. But it's like my buddy Toby Keith right here in Moore. Toby tells people that I was the most famous person ever from Moore High School till he came along. And then he's true. I mean, he's telling the truth.
He's got his name on the water tower.
I dig that. Well, we've talked about that too. I told him, I said, I'll tell you something else too, big boy. I said, I had my name on the water tower in Moore before you ever went to school at Moore. Toby's 20 years younger than me, so that's how far apart we are. But I said I had my name up there. I said, of course, the only difference was I had to climb up on that tower and paint it on there myself with John Deere paint. But I did, so I've had my name on the water tower. It's no big deal, Toby.
All right, wow. All right, Josh wants to know, what young angler impresses you the most, Jimmy?
Well, they all do. I'm telling you, they all do. And I'll just use a perfect example of I'll just throw a name out there that probably very few people have heard of, Cole Floyd. And Cole fishes for Bethel University. He's fishing this year, his first year on the on fishing professionally. And I fished with I had brought some of the Bethel University team, 4 of their team members, down to my ranch down in the Arbuckles this last year, and we fished a little event. It was kind of a little made-for-TV deal for a couple, 2 or 3 television deals. We do have it on our Jimmy Houston Outdoors television show also, and Paul, we were actually fishing against that Bethel University team. 3 of my buddies that really are not. One of them, Jimmy Seitz, who's got an outdoor, spiritual outdoor television show, hunting, fishing, a great hunter, mediocre fisherman. And I hope Jimmy hears this. But Jimmy knows that. I mean, he's not going to. But Jimmy's a great friend of mine. And the other 2 guys were, one of them was a coach of the Bethel University team, and he's a great friend. Perfect example if you can't fish, coach. And and the other was a guy that works for a buddy of mine, Winston Tucker, that owns Guggen Baits and Favorite Rods. And so my 3, and we're fishing against 4 of the best college fishermen in the nation, and these kids can really fish. And I fished with Cole during that event, and the boys beat us, but actually they didn't really beat us that badly. And Cole and I ended up having the top 2 catches, I think, of the deal for that day. We used the measuring deal like Major League Fishing uses and turned the fish back. We added some different rules in there to protect the fish a little bit better than Major League Fishing does. We handle the fish a lot differently than they do because I don't like the way they handle them. But anyway, Cole Floyd is a really impressive young fisherman out there. There are a lot of guys fishing on the tournament level out there that are, I mean, they already have great credentials that are really good, but the young fishermen out there that nobody's ever heard of, I'm going to throw Cole Floyd out there and watch for that name over the next few years.
There you go. I wrote it down.
There you have it. We might get him on the show.
Yeah,
Try to get him on the show.
Hey,
He's going to be a good one.
Jimmy said you're coming up.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Dave wants to know your favorite all-time spinnerbait in production and out of production.
Well, my favorite's got to be the ones that we built originally, the Redman spinnerbait. We named that Redman spinnerbait out of Northeastern back when it was politically correct to say Redman, which you can't say anymore. Now Northeastern's a River Hawks. They changed the name of that, but took the Indian name off. I'm married to an Indian. She was against that, but most of the Indians I know were against changing that name. They like the name Red Man on Northeastern College, but we built that Red Man spinnerbait. That's what it was named after. Was where I went to college, and we actually sold that spinnerbait I sold it personally to Sam Walton, the guy that started Walmart stores when he had 13 stores.
Wow.
And we built those in the back of my insurance agency, and we could not hardly build enough spinnerbaits to supply 13 Walmart stores in the inception. And ironically, I probably should have continued selling lures to Walmart, and I probably would have made more money than I made fishing. I wouldn't have had nearly as much fun. But ironically, we have throughout all those years had a Jimmy Houston brand spinnerbait in Walmart, and we have them right there with the Lucky Strike Jimmy Houston Legend spinnerbaits are in Walmart right now. So we have actually been selling Walmart, a brand of Jimmy Houston spinnerbaits. So we've been with several, Strike King and Booyah, Pradco brand, and Terminator. We developed the Terminator with the Johnson brothers in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And so we've and now, of course, the last several years we've been doing Lucky Strike, Jimmy Houston Legends bait. But my favorite's still that original Red Man spinnerbait. It had the bug eyes on it, and we built them by the thousands in the back of our insurance agency there in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and that's where selling spinnerbaits really started for me. And I want to tell you, it's amazing what God does in your life in arranging things to help you, and arranging things and putting things in your mind and ideas in your mind. I can remember going to a University of Oklahoma. Of course, growing up at Moore, obviously, you bleed crimson.
Yep.
It's it. And I don't hate people from Oklahoma State. I don't hate to see it. I don't see them lose, except when they play us. But that is that deal here in Oklahoma a lot. The people cheer for Oklahoma and they cheer for whomever's playing Oklahoma State that day, and vice versa. And that's cool. That's cool. It's a great deal. But I can remember going to an Oklahoma University football game, and I never seen so many people. Obviously, 20 or 25,000 less than we have now at the Oklahoma games when I was a kid. But going to an Oklahoma, and he's never seen so many people in one place. And I remember one time I was 10 or 11 years old telling my dad, Dad, if I could just make a dime off of every person here, I'd be rich, wouldn't I? And my dad looked at me and he said, well, yeah, son, you'd be rich. And obviously you wouldn't be rich. But, to a 10 or 11-year-old kid, you might be rich if you could make a dime off everybody there. And in essence, with a lot of our career, that's what we're doing. We're making a dime off of everybody there at the stadium, maybe. But we're making 75 cents or $1 a pair off of every pair of sunglasses. We're making a little bit off of every spinnerbait. We're making, on and on and on. We're making a little bit off of every Jimmy Houston rod and reel. So we're actually. And it's amazing the way God arranged things. I don't know if God heard that and said, "That's a good idea, Jimmy. I'll help you with that."
No, you breezed over this. So you have a spinnerbait. Sam Walton, obviously, they're in Arkansas there. So you just were like, "Hey, Sam, I know you got a sports goods deal in your store here. You need to put my spinnerbaits in it."
It's exactly what we did. Went to Bentonville.
Wow.
Sam Walton, like the Sam Walton.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sam Walton was a very ordinary man, and the stories you read the stories about him going around in a pickup truck and going into stores and then people not knowing who he was that worked for him, not knowing who he was, because he was just a common type individual that had a tremendous marketing mind. One of the things about Sam Walton was a good friend with Homer Circle. And Homer Circle is a name that a lot of the younger fishermen don't know of, but Homer Circle, and I think he wrote for Field and Stream. Kris said she thinks it's Outdoor Life, but one of those magazines. And Homer was from over there in that area, and Homer and Sam were hunting buddies. They quail hunted together.
Yeah.
We actually sold. We own a travel agency also over in Tahlequah on 10 Killer, and we actually sold Sam and Bud Walton airplane tickets before they ever owned an airplane. And,
wow!
And they bought those airplane tickets from us because he was buying spinnerbaits from us. And so when we started the travel agency, and I told Bud, I said, "Hey, y'all ever fly?" And they said, "Well, we don't fly much, but we're starting to fly a little bit more." And I said, "Well, you need to buy plane tickets from us. We make a commission off of those." And he said, "We'll buy them from you. We don't care." So I actually sold Sam and Bud Walton airplane tickets.
All right, I have a personal question. I'm just really curious. 3 huge University of Oklahoma fans. Obviously, you, Jimmy, and then Toby Keith.
Absolutely.
And then the other guy that you see on the sidelines all the time, JR, Jim Ross.
Northeastern.
Have you ever taken Jim Ross out fishing?
Jim and I go back a long way too. We've known each other forever, but Jim and I have never fished together. I don't know that Jim ever fished. I know he didn't fish back in college, but no, we haven't. I've carried Barry Switzer fishing a lot, over the years. I actually, Barry is such a great guy, and we've been friends for. Barry was saying 5 decades, and since we just rolled a new decade in the 2020, I guess he would be saying 6 now, because I think he was counting like the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and now 2020. So 6 decades. Barry and I have been running around together.
Wow.
But we were selling boats for a boat company, we owned the insurance agency at the same time. And I'd heard that Barry fished, and so when Barry got the head coaching job at Oklahoma University, I'd never met him, and I'm of course real tight with the university now. I go to games, I sit in Joe Castiglione's suite, and they treat me a little bit better than they did back in those days. I got good friends at OU now. We got good connections in the athletic department, and we try to help the athletic department as much as we can too. We've done a lot over the years, totally within the NCAA rules. I'll say right now, totally. But we've done a lot throughout the years with the athletic department out there. But I went to Barry. We were selling boats, and I'd either bought or traded out or something a back page ad in a Oklahoma. I think it was Bass in Oklahoma or something. An Oklahoma fishing and hunting magazine. The back cover of that was going to have that boat company ad. And I thought, Barry had a great start. He was 30-0-1 his first 31 games at Oklahoma University. People forget what a great start he had. He had a great record overall, but his start was great. And so I just called him up, and I'd heard that he liked to fish because I knew he fished with Bobby Bell, who I knew.
Right.
And so I got his number from Bobby, and I just called him up, and I told him, I said, Barry, I want to do a picture of you and I sitting in this boat and put it in a magazine ad. Will you do it? He said, yeah, Jimmy, I'll do it. You carry me fishing sometime? And I said, sure, I'll carry you fishing sometime. And that's how it started. And I met him at Thunderbird.
That's Dirty Bird still. It's still Dirty Bird. We talk about it all the time.
Slip of the tongue. It's actually turned into a pretty good fishing lake. Yeah. But I met him out at Lake Thunderbird, and first time I'd ever met him. Yeah. And we take a picture in this boat. I had the magazine had a professional photographer out there. We take a picture in this boat and put it in the magazine ad, and we've been buddies ever since.
Wow.
So,
did you get any barbecue sauce from JR?
I don't think I ever have.
Man.
I don't think I ever have.
He needs to hook you up, Jimmy.
He does. I see JR occasionally in the ball game on the sidelines. Yeah. And I don't go down on the sidelines too awful much. If we're doing something with one of the players or something, I'll go down the sidelines, maybe go in the locker room, but it's a lot better up there in that suite.
Yeah, it is.
The Joe's suite used to be, before we did the renovation, Joe's suite was right beside Toby's. And of course, I've known Toby for a long time. I actually met Toby through the University of Oklahoma. Joe Castiglione introduced us to one night at an Oklahoma University basketball game. Of course, he knew Toby liked to fish, and so we were back in the locker room after a game, after one of the basketball games. I think that after we had stomped Texas Tech, when I can't remember the coach they had down there that nobody liked, but anyway.
Kelvin?
We beat them. We beat them real badly that night, and I was we were down in the locker room after the game, and Joe Castiglione brought Toby over there, and he introduced us. That's how Toby and I was because of Joe.
Very nice. Very nice.
He's a true Big 12 fan, getting his shots at on West Virginia, on Texas Tech, on Oak State.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's awesome. All right, here's what we're going to do. We also
beat Baylor twice this year.
Yeah, we did.
This is true. And we almost
did not beat them last night, but we
almost.
I sure did. I'm going to tell you, no offense to Austin, but I sure was hoping he wouldn't take that last shot.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
He's just, Austin is a really, really good player, and he's just, I don't know. He's just a little bit intimidated in the Big 12. It seems to me like he's a great player, and he started the year off shooting well. But once he's got, where it really, really counts, he's just not playing as good a ball. Yeah. Of course, the Big 12 knows about him too, and of course Manick is having his best year ever, and Christian Doolittle is showing up at times and not showing up at times.
Yeah.
But we had a good shot at that game.
Fun to watch.
Good shot at that game at Baylor. But Oklahoma State was only 3. They had a shot to go down and tie, and they threw the ball away.
Yeah.
Baylor is beatable, and I'm going to go out right now and just say Baylor's not going to win the Big 12 championship tournament. They may win they got their lights on for the winning a championship, and I just soon see them win it. Besides Kansas, I would just as soon see that happen. But Kansas has got to play at Baylor.
Yeah.
And so
we'll see.
And Kansas Kansas is beatable also. The conference is close. I mean, we're picked to finish 8th, and, we're better than that. We may finish 8th, but we're a better team than that.
No, I agree.
We may finish up in the top 3 or 4, too.
I agree. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to have a special guest, Matt, with Jimmy, and we're going to squash the rumors about Ott Defo. All right? We're going to squash those rumors.
If I'm lying, I'm dying.
We're going to hear the story on Mr. Ott Defo. So we're going to take a break, come back with a very special guest here on BTL on a Tuesday, everybody. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The ultimate fishing system starts with Lowrance HDS Live. Upgrade to HDS Live with a Ghost trolling motor, live sight transducer, or Structure Scan 3D, and get up to $500 cash back.
Yeah, you care about gear ratios, inches per turn, and ball bearings, but most importantly, you want reliability and dependability in the equipment you use. Luz doesn't cut corners when it comes to the gear they build. The new Speed Spool LFS is the best $99 reel in the market. Go see for yourself.
We've paired one of the most iconic hulls in the history of bass boats with a proven lineup of trusted accessories. We're bringing you best-in-class value and performance, leaving others in your wake. Turnkey value, turnkey performance. The Pantera 2 is an overachiever in the 19-foot category. Once you hit the throttle, you'll feel the rush, and there's no looking back.
Kevin, what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just filling in for Billy.
I need a 660 shad crankbaits in the Series 5 model.
We're out.
You're not out. You got all kinds of them right there.
We're out.
Kevin, I need 6.
Have a lollipop.
I do not want a lollipop.
Have a lollipop.
Do you have it in sexy shad color?
At Duckett Fishing, we have assembled the top pros in the country to help us design rods to give you a competitive advantage. Castability, strength, durability, action, sensitivity, weight and balance, and consistency. Combine that with the best warranty in the industry, and you have rods that are pro-driven.
Duckett Fishing, pro-driven.
I want to share to you a new product we got coming out from Sunline. This is the FC leader size spools that we have now. We've gotten a lot of requests for this. A lot of you guys use fluorocarbon for leaders only, myself included. And one of the problems you have is when you have a 200-yard spool, that might last you 2, 3, 4 years. You might even lose it before you even get done with the spool. So we've gone to a little smaller spool. These are 50-yard spool sizes. You know, that way you're not holding your line on forever. You can keep your line fresh, use it when you can, stores real easily in the boat. We got all of our popular line sizes that you're used to with our Sniper from 5 to 14 pound. If you guys are looking for a line that you're only tying for a leader, go check out Sunline FC Leader 100% fluorocarbon and give it a try.
Blue Water by TH Marine. Offering LED lighting solutions for your boat, trailer, truck, ATV, and so much more. Engineered and built to be rugged with waterproof and submersible options. Designed for easy installation, Blue Water is available in a variety of colors and styles. All backed by a limited lifetime warranty. Blue Water by TH Marine.
The name SPRO says it all. SPRO stands for Sports Professionals. When you look at the pro staff that SPRO has brought on board over the past 15 years, it's been pretty incredible. I mean, one got it just then. From the development of the rock crawler to the McStick, from the Fat Papa to the Little John series, when you tie a SPRO bait on, you know it's been designed by a professional to get the job done.
Meet AFCO's iCast award-winning Hydronaut waterproof system. Hydronaut features a 20K 100% waterproof shell, double dry cuffs to keep water out. Speed vent hood engineered to prevent neck strain at high rates of speed. AFTCO exclusive Cyclops tactical camera mount. Comfort Flex shoulder straps for all-day comfort. Outerwear that you can count on. The Hydronaut waterproof system by AFTCO. Any fish, any water.
All of us on the Pro Tournament Trail use Gamakatsu hooks. Why? Because they are absolutely the best.
It's not about how many bites you get.
It's how many you put in the boat.
Gamakatsu makes hooks for every fishing style.
We didn't come this far to lose fish.
Did you?
For more information, visit gamakatsu.com.
The Big Bite Baits Kamikaze Swim On is a very unique bait, and it's got a full body but with ribs to give it a bigger profile but not more plastic. It's got a jointed tail that gives it a lot of action, as well as this up and down crawl type trail with holes and ribs in it, so it creates a bubble trail almost. This bait is supposed to be fished upside down or vertical like this on a great for a chatterbait. I prefer it on a swim jig as well, but you can also cut it down and put it on the back of a finesse jig. You know, flip it around for some spotted bass or flipping docks. Anytime you want a small, compact, little trailer for it, this is great for it. So check out the full lineup of swim-ons at bigbitebaits.com.
All right, we are back on a Tuesday, BTL. And folks, I am very excited. Obviously, we have Jimmy Houston in studio. Did about a 45-minute segment there. Absolutely incredible, some of the stories, Jimmy. But now we are joined with a special guest. And Matt, he's over there cracking up at me. It's weird how things work out. And joining us now is PBA touring professional, Mr. Kris Prather. One of the, probably one of the top 10 guys on tour, no doubt. Champion, won the PBA playoff last year. And folks, I'm telling you, this guy is an absolute superstar when it comes to the game of bowling. And we're going to have Kris on. And Kris, thanks for taking time to come to the show and be a part of this thing. With Jimmy sitting right next to you, Jimmy, the way that Kris and I pulled this off, very interesting story. And I'm going to let him tell the story about what he used to do when he was out fishing with his dad in Florida and what his dad used to tell him. So, Kris, go ahead, man.
I grew up saltwater fishing and being in Florida and everything like that. And I watched you on TV growing up, watched Bill dance as well. And anytime I'd catch a fish, I'd swing it in the boat and catch it and hold it up. And he's like, you're just trying to be Jimmy Houston, aren't you? For pretty much my entire youth, I wanted to be either a professional bowler or a professional fisherman. And, it just worked out that there wasn't a whole lot of saltwater tournaments where I was at. And I've only been bass fishing for the past 5 or 6 years, really, since I moved to the Midwest. So now that I get to travel around the Midwest, I try to carry as much fishing stuff as I can with me and go when I'm free. But yeah, he used to call me Bill Dance and Jimmy Houston, and that I wanted to be you guys. I wanted to be on TV fishing and make a career out of it, and now I do it in my free time. And it's just it's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Kris, it's great to meet you too. And I told you, I bowled in bowling leagues back when I was in high school and in college, and we still bowl occasionally around at some of the Bass Pro Shop store openings. We MC the openings, and they have bowling alleys and quite a few of them now. We get to bowl, but yeah, I grew up right here around right here in Moore, Oklahoma, and my dad and my uncles every Friday night would go bowling. And would bowl until 2 o'clock in the morning. So I grew up on bowling, and I never could throw the ball well enough to become a pro at it, but did well and had a lot of fun. Still enjoy going bowling, still enjoy it. But you guys are, I mean, I said, what do you average anyway? Like 220, 220, 225, just throw that out there. And listen, back when I was a kid, professional bowlers were only averaging about 2 1/5 or something like that. Just barely over. If you could average a little over 200, you were a professional bowler back in those days, right?
Yep, 100%.
But that's just how much that game has come along. We talk about how much bass fishing has changed over the year. That's a game right there that really, when you think about it, is a relatively simple game. We still score the same way, except now you can't cheat. They score automatically for you. But you. It's about the same game. It scores exactly the same. The length of the down to the ball, the pins are the same. You still got 10 pins. Still got everything's sort of the same. But the technology with the balls and everything have changed a lot, and that's made a difference. And you guys have just over the years have become better and better and better. And now to play at your level, a 205 average wouldn't play. Just wouldn't even play, would it?
Not normally, no.
Everybody's got to be up there around that 220 mark.
Yeah, so I actually met Mark this weekend at a tournament that we were running, and back when you were bowling, everything was what we call hand oiled. We used big, expensive machines that are about as much as a bass boat today. But we bowled a tournament where it was hand oiled, and they're incredibly hard. And then which is why back when you were bowling, if you average 205, you're considered really, really good. Now we get mad when we shoot 205. We're like, oh my God, I should be shooting 240 every game. And like you said,
what I'm going to look at. See, I'm going to look at that as the oil deal. So back when I was in college bowling in those leagues and averaging 176, 178, I really probably today's world would be like 190.
Yeah.
195. Okay, I'm going to start telling people I was actually 190.
There you go, Jimmy.
Averaging 190 in college. On today's scale.
Yeah. All right, I want to do this. Now on the show, Kris and Jimmy, we had a viewer on the instant feedback said that Ott Defo had some serious game and should be out on tour and can average 220. What's the scoop on this? Ott, is he that good of a bowler?
Ott can't hit the other end of the alley. His bowl, I'll just put it this way, and for anybody that knows anything about bowling, his bowl backs up. So I just throw that out there. I don't have to say anything else other than his bowl backs up. That's what it does.
So that was just totally wrong.
Ott and I both work for Bass Pro Shop, and I MC the openings for all the Bass Pro Shop stores nationwide. I've done all 100 of them except for 2 or 3 that we had conflicts in schedules. But like I said, the Bass Pro Shops nowadays, a lot of them are having bowling alleys, and so we shut the autograph lines off at 9 o'clock. We'll have 10, 15,000 people at those openings, and so from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock, it's nothing but autograph sessions. But we shut that off at 9 o'clock. It's a mandatory. They close the store, and so we go back to the bowling alley, which also has a restaurant at all of them, and we bowl usually till midnight. We just kind of some of the guys that are there and just have a big time, and Ott and I have bowled together a lot at those things, and so somehow after we bowled together, we were somewhere, and somebody mentioned something about the Bass Pro Shop bowling alleys, and I mentioned bowling with Ott, and I said, you can't believe how good he is. I mean, it blew me away. I mean, he's like 220, 218, 220. I mean, he debated a lot, and I started that story, and Ott just went along with it. He never told anybody any different, and we started telling the other professional fishermen that. And it sort of got around, evidently.
It did.
I put a deal out on our YouTube channel. I put a deal out on our Jimmy Houston Outdoors YouTube channel. And actually, last year's Classic, which Ott won in Knoxville, talking about it, professional bowler wins Bassmaster Classic. That's how I started it. So that was part of that too. That probably kind of perpetuated that out a little bit more. And we've never let any of the other fishermen out there know any different. So don't tell them.
So there you have it.
I'd probably will hear about this. He'll say, Jimmy, I thought you were my bud. Here you go, telling people the truth about my bowling.
Yeah.
He's so much fun to hang out with. Let me tell you, and as good a bass fisherman as Ott is, and he's a great bass fisherman, and he's a down to earth type bass fisherman. You know what I'm saying? he can go out and catch fish. He doesn't have to have all of the fancy electronics and everything that we use nowadays and all the great stuff. Now, he uses all that just like all of us do. But there are a lot of young fishermen out there nowadays that could not go out there and compete on the top levels if they had to play with the same equipment we were playing with 20 and 30 years ago. You mentioned something like triangulating out in the middle of a lake, a spot. They have no idea what that word means because you don't triangulate anything anymore. You run out there and put a GPS down and a GPS spot down on it, and you got it. But Odd is one of those guys that could play the game without all of that stuff, and I admire those kind of people. The younger fishermen are all of the new stuff that comes out. It's when it's new to us, it's new to them, except they've grown up with a telephone in their hand. They've grown up with a computer in their bedroom, and so they adapt to that stuff so much quicker than we do.
Jimmy, what are your plans for this year? A lot of people want to know, what do you got going on this year?
Well,
man?
we're not fishing tournaments.
Right.
First year, we fished national tournaments 54 consecutive years, more longer than anybody ever has, and we're going to continue to do the television show. We do 26 shows for Jimmy Houston Outdoors, 13 for Jimmy Houston Adventures. We've got a Facebook page of 286,000 on there, and we kicked off a YouTube page last year at the end of February, and it was an old page we had that we hadn't put anything up on in years. And I didn't even know we had a YouTube channel. I didn't know we had one. And I was fishing with Roland Martin last February, and he's working real hard he's got a great YouTube channel also, Roland Martin Outdoors. And he said, Jimmy, you need to get this going. You need to get this going. This is the new thing. You need to get it going. And I said, well, I don't know. And he was telling me all about it. And I said, well, I think I'll do that. And my camera guy runs my production company in Tulsa, Pat Turner. I said, Pat, we need to start a YouTube channel. Let's start a YouTube channel. He said, well, we got a YouTube channel. I said, really? I said, well, how many people we had on there? Because I thought he might say 100,000 or 200,000. He said, I don't know. I'll look. He said, I don't think it's very many. And so he looked, and it was less than 2,000. And I said, well, how come we only got 2,000? He said, Jimmy, you don't put anything on there. You run a YouTube channel, you got to put stuff on there.
Yeah.
And so that was the end of February, and we've grown that to a little roll over 34,000 today. Mm-hmm. We've added about 1,000 in the last 3 days. So we're working real hard on that YouTube channel. We'll post over 500 videos on it this year.
Wow.
That's a lot of work. We do a daily devotional every day at 5 o'clock in the morning Central Time. That is, it's got a scripture, a daily devotional that's built around fishing, and a fishing tip for every day. So at the end of the year, everybody's going to be a little bit better fishermen. They're going to have a little bit closer walk with God, perhaps. And then plus we post Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday, a video every Sunday, every Wednesday, every Friday. Plus, I just throw in a few extras every day, whatever I do. It's something I think is kind of cool and fun while we just do a video on it. So.
All right, real quick, I want to ask you, how is your lake? I've had the opportunity. I actually went down there, filmed a bunch of stuff one time. How's your lake doing at your house?
It's really doing well now. We lost that lake back in 2015. I said when we rebuilt it, we had it back completely full of water. It's 130 acres. We had it full of water by the Wednesday before Christmas that year. So we lost it Mother's Day. It was in May. Had the dam built back in September, the lake completely full. We restocked it in 2016. I said 2020 will be a banner year. This is it. So
nice.
We got a lot of 3 and 4 and 5 pound fish in there. We've got another lake on the ranch that we built back in 2005 that's got a lot of really big fish, but it's only 77 acres. But we've had a little otter problem down there, so that's hurt our fish population in the lake we built back, but we have eliminated a lot of that otter problem in the last couple of weeks. So we're a lot of the beaver problem that's been eliminated also. So,
all right, Jimmy. A couple people want to know, and then I'm gonna hit up Kris on a couple of questions here real quick. But a lot of people on the instant feedback want to know, what do you think that professional bass fishing is going to look like within the next 10 years?
It's really hard to say. I wish I knew, but I think it's going to be better than it is now. I think it will continue to get better. I hope that the money goes up. We've been sort of stagnant on the money in professional bass fishing for the last several years. Actually, some of the organizations are paying less money than they've been paying in the past. And now Major League Fishing gives no money for Angler of the Year. Whereas, in the last several years, that's been $100,000 to win Angler of the Year. Now FLW this year is not even having any money for Angler of the Year. So there's been some step backs as far as the dollars involved in it. But I think it'll get better. I think that probably, one of the key things you could just throw out there 10 years from now, we will still probably be fishing 5 fish limits and carrying those fish to the weigh-in, or some combination of what Major League Fishing does and what Bass and FLW does right now. The public that go to tournaments and attend tournaments have not accepted the idea of people not bringing fish to a weigh-in.
Yeah.
And all you need to do is just go to a weigh-in of Major League Fishing, and you see that.
Yeah.
And I'm a big supporter of Major League Fishing. And I think I know the people well. Obviously, I know the fishermen, but I also Jim Wilburn in Tulsa that started all that years ago is a great friend of mine and a good man. And we've worked with him a lot in production. He owned a big production company in Tulsa, which I own a production company in Tulsa. And we worked together on a lot of projects over the years, and a great businessman. So I think that it'll probably end up with some sort of a blend of what we're doing now. The great thing is that the owners of those organizations are smart people. The fishermen are smart people at that level, and they will work out whatever's best for the game. I don't know. It may be totally different than it is now. I don't know, but I think we'll still be fishing for bringing those fish to the weigh-in. I've only fished one Major League Fishing event, the Legends Tournament over on Table Rock, and Ott Defoe was my partner in that. It was a team event, and it was only 4 teams: Bill Dance, Roland Martin, Johnny Morris, and I. Teamed up with 4 Timmy Horton and Kevin Van Dam and Edwin Evers and Ott. And it was a great event. We had a lot of fun. It's a fun thing to fish. I actually did a deal with Bethel University, I said earlier, with using, basically their rules.
Right.
And so it's a fun way to fish. It's perhaps not the best thing at the very top level. I'll put it that way. But some blend of that might come about. What they're trying to accomplish there is to develop a bigger television and social media audience, and I think they've done that. I think they've done that. I think it's been successful from that standpoint, but it's been unsuccessful from the standpoint of getting people to show up at weigh-ins and be able to interact with the fishermen. And one of the big things that happened, and one of the reasons I fished tournaments for so long, is I feel like I owe the game a lot for what it's been done for me. And one of the ways you can pay the game back is to be at those tournaments, and when you walk off that stage, whether you've weighed in 20 pounds or you weighed in 5 pounds, and you walk off that stage, and all of those high school bass fishermen and all of those people that have been watching you on television forever can come over there and get a hat signed, get a picture taken.
Yeah.
And if you got your bag of fish, you got a big one in there, you can let a 12-year-old kid hold your bass up and you take a picture with him.
Yeah.
And that's paying the game back, and that's that part of the game is not involved in MLF, and I think that's a very big and important part of the game. Is that this is one of the games, and I think bowling's the same way, where the fans can really interact with y'all. They can talk with y'all. You go to a Major League Baseball game or an NFL football game or an NBA game. Very small percentage of the fans can really get to go shake hands with a player.
Yeah.
And you can get autographs on baseballs. Some of them will come over to the stand, so you can go down there before a game, maybe get something. But where you can walk up and you can pull your phone out and show Kevin Van Dam a picture of your biggest bass, and
That's cool.
You can, that is very, very cool.
Yeah.
And you can get your picture taken with Roland Martin or something like that, and it's just it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that accessibility, I think, is an important part of tournament fishing.
All right, very cool. Kris, how cool is it sitting next to Jimmy Houston right now?
I'm not even kidding. I slept like garbage.
I think it's cool to fish, but said by somebody that's a better bowler, not Defoe. he bowls in 5 frames what Ott does. No, he bowls in less than 5 frames. I'd averages 2 something also, but that's a series, not a game.
I'm not gonna kid you. I slept like garbage last night because I was so excited to be here and meet you, and it's just a huge honor for me. Because like I said, I grew up watching you.
Well, you can go fishing. We can go fishing. We can do that. Today's a lousy day because yesterday would have been great if I'd known you was here.
Yeah. I just met him.
Not very far. Not very far from here is 130 acres. A pretty good place to go bass fishing.
Yeah, really, really cool. All right, real quick, Kris. I talk about it on the show all the time. So many similarities between bowling and fishing, but a big deal for the PBA was the agreement that the PBA has with Fox and being at the forefront from a television standpoint. Talk a little bit about that real quick.
Yeah, the previous channel we were on, ESPN, they didn't really put a whole lot of time and energy into the shows because they had football, they had baseball, they had other sports.
Yeah.
And they just kind of grouped it all together with bowling, and bowling used to be huge on ABC and then ESPN, and it kind of went down. And then once we switched over to Fox, they put time and energy. They went out and they got sponsors for the PBA specifically and ran commercials. So there was a huge influx of money, which is where the PBA playoffs came from. It was the largest prize that had been on the tour in almost a decade, since like 2012 or something like that.
Yeah.
There hadn't been a tournament that had paid $100,000 or more in almost a decade. So Fox is doing an incredible job. The shows are more entertaining. There's more statistics. They go into more detail, and similar to what because bass fishing, to me, it's harder to catch a 10-pound bass than it is to bowl a 300 nowadays. But they're teaching.
I disagree. It's easier to catch a bass than a bowl of 300.
Well,
for me,
I haven't put much time on the water. Nothing compared to anybody in this room. And the biggest bass that I've caught is just shy of 7 pounds. So, and that took me all of 5.5 years to fishing as much as I could and trying to learn. And obviously, I've put a lifetime on the lanes so far. But I think that bowling is trending up, and I think doing stuff like this, hitting a little bit of a different demographic where, like we were talking earlier, you can meet anybody through bowling, you can meet anybody through fishing, and I had no clue that you did this Bass Talk Live where it's just crazy how you can meet anybody at any time and have these crazy opportunities to meet people that you looked up to for your entire life. So it's just a cool opportunity, and I would like to see Fox and the PBA to continue to grow and create a future for kids that just love bowling.
Yeah. By the way, Jimmy, he's the guy that won the $100,000. All right. He won the largest purse in like 12 years on the PBA tour.
That's cool.
This guy's game, it's flawless. Flawless.
Bowling has been a lot like bass fishing in that we've struggled to get the money up where a guy can really make a living doing it. I mean, it really has. And even when I was a kid, bowling still had good television exposure, but the money was still low. And it's I think it's fantastic. And television is a big part of it, where that can happen. The social media has got into just about every segment of our life and everything we do, and that's probably going to be something that is going to help bowling too, money wise, as time goes by.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. I can't thank you enough, Jimmy, for taking time out, coming into the studio. The time that I spent with you down at your ranch doing that filming, it was about 10 years ago, was priceless. One of my best memories, including what happened 30 years ago when I was working for UPS. So I can't thank you enough for coming in and really look forward to seeing where the remainder of your career goes. The television show is still awesome. Everything that you're doing to continue striving to grow this game and everything that you're doing with the college students and the high school students, you're one of the all-timers, man.
Well, we keep playing the game, and we'll keep playing as long as we possibly can. And it's just, that's one of the good things about fishing. It's one of the good things about bowling. I mean, you can bowl way longer than you can play a lot of the other sports. I can still shoot free throws. I can't shoot a three-point shot much anymore because we didn't have a three-point shot when I was playing basketball.
Right.
I wish we did. My average would have been a little bit better. But I can still shoot free throws. But you can't run up and down a football field. You can't run up and down a basketball court as you get, past the start, unless you're Kris Paul. Now Kris Paul can still wow. But you outlive your games. Fishing is a game that you can. I carried a guy fishing when he's 96 years old. Well, Jerry Roten's dad. That's the guy I was talking about right here. And I carried him fishing when he's 96 years old. Spoke at his funeral about 6 months later, and we caught 49 bass that day. Caught 49 bass. 96 years old. And he had just an absolute ball. Jerry Roten, by the way, is a guy that developed the Little Tubby lure.
Wow.
You remember the Little Tubby? It's produced by Storm right here in Norman. They sold that to Normark. It's not an Oklahoma company anymore. But Jerry's the one that came up with that bait, and guy that I went to that first BASS tournament with. This is a small world. It's got hundreds of millions of people in it, but it's a very small world.
All right, Kris, this week, stop number 2 on the PBA Tour, Fire Lake. Anybody here in Oklahoma, I highly recommend going out, seeing some of the action, the TV finals on Sunday. And Jimmy, the tour this year could not have gotten started any better because on the TV finals, a guy by the name of Tommy Jones got inducted in the Hall of Fame on Saturday. Then on Sunday, he goes out and shoots 300 on television. So
that's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, that's pretty good. Well, one of the great things now is that I've got somebody I can follow in the PBA.
Yeah.
I've over the years followed a lot of the professional golfers. Most of the golfers out there now that I've played with and fished with over the years have retired from golfing. But it's kind of neat when you get to meet somebody in some of the professional sports, and you got somebody you can root for and pull for, and you pay attention to them a little bit more nowadays.
Yeah.
That's cool.
All right, Kris, thanks for taking time out. Hope you enjoyed hopefully you're not going to be late for your practice session today in Shawnee, but man, greatly appreciate you spending time
here. How many
here.
games do you roll practice? I mean,
they give us a time limit, so it depends on how many shots we throw in that time limit, but typically we bowl for about 2 hours, and in that 2 hours we might bowl 5-6 games. So,
do you do specific things, or are you just simply bowling games?
If I'm trying to work on something, like in the tournament, I missed a ton of spares, so I'll go and practice spares for a little while. But typically, we're trying to get comfortable on the approach because depending on where we are in the country, it might be a little sticky, might be a little slick. And then we're trying to figure out what the oil's telling us to do. So.
Do they set you spares up? Spares up? So in other words, you got to throw the ball and not get a strike. Probably hard to do. Probably hard for you to do.
Well, luckily for me, I just try to repeat, hitting a target. You got the arrows on the lanes, and if let's say I leave the 10 pin, which is the one on the far right,
historically always the hardest.
Always the hardest one for the right-handers. If I miss a few of those, I'll just continue to practice them on a full rack, and for me, if I miss the 3 pin to the right but hit the 10 pin, then I know that I made it.
I was thinking he needs somebody like you or me to be there with him. We could throw the first ball and let him throw the spare.
Well, you know what he's doing?
Would that work?
He's kind of going out graphing is what he's doing. He's going out graphing. He's pre-fishing and graphing.
Yeah. Well, I've walked some of the courses with some of the PGA players when they're warming up, and it's amazing some of the things they do.
Yeah.
And of course now they're walking the course, and they may lay a ball down and at a certain distance and hit 5 balls to the green at that distance, and of course they're learning all where the grass was grown and what year it was planted in, all this stuff that nobody ever thinks about when hitting a golf ball.
Yeah.
But I figure y'all are doing all the same things.
Because every week the way the oil is placed on the lane, because like I said, we use these big expensive machines now, and they can put oil basically wherever you want. We have to visualize where that oil is because it's invisible, and just kind of put a picture in our brain of what we want our ball to do on the lane to generate the best angle to create a strike.
There you have it, Jimmy. You know what he needs to start doing? Kissing the bowling ball. That's what he needs to start doing.
I bet after he's bowled a few 300s, I bet he kisses that ball right there.
All right. Hey, tomorrow, a good friend of yours we're going to have on the show, Mr. Rick Clunn. So looking forward to that. Jimmy, can't thank you enough, man. Wish you nothing but the best in 2020. Kris, best of luck to you this week in Shawnee. Folks, tomorrow, Rick Clunn, we will be back. That is it. We are out of here.
Cool.